In this video, I'm going to show you how to make a GIF in Google Earth Engine using a function. At the end of this, I will have a GIF that has images for every single year between 1984 and 2025. I'm going to make my GIF today in the Fort Worth, Dallas area. This area has experienced a lot of urbanization recently, so I would like to visualize that in a true color GIF. Because I want to span the years 1984 to the present, I'm going to use a combination of Landsat 5 and Landsat 8. So I'll start off by just importing those. In order to use both of these satellites, I'm going to need to rename their bands because these two satellites have different band names. For example, we know that Landsat 8, the red band is called SRB4, but in Landsat 5, the red band is called SRB3. So instead of that, I'm just going to rename the bands that I am interested in and that I'll need for this GIF. First, I'll create a variable called Landsat 5 for merge because we're getting ready to merge it with Landsat 8. I'll take that Landsat 5 image collection and I'll filter it by the bounds of my ROI really quick. And then I'm going to select the bands that I'm interested in. In this case, I'm going to get the shortwave, infrared, near infrared, red, green, and blue. So those would be SRB5 through B1. And then in this next list, I'm going to put what those bands will be renamed as. And I'm just going to rename them to represent the light that they represent. I'm now going to do the same thing with Landsat 8. So I will copy paste this Landsat 5 code and then carefully edit it to correspond to Landsat 8. We, of course, need to change the bands that each of these light wavelengths represent. So in this case, the shortwave infrared would correspond to SRB6. And then I'll delete SRB1 because that's coastal blue and I'm not using that here. Now we can merge these two image collections. I'll create a variable and I'll just call it merged images. And I'll merge the L5 for merge, and then I'll use this merge function to do that with the L8 for merge. Let's print our resulting image collection to make sure it represents what we think it should represent. Great, so we have an image collection with 3,500 elements. We can look inside of here and just look in the first image and its bands, and we can see that the bands are now renamed. Now in my next section of code, I can start to make the function that will create my GIF. The purpose of this function is to get one image per year and to make that image cloud-free. We're first going to create a list that represents all of the years that we want to create an image for. So I'll call this variable list. And in order to create a list representing 1984 to 2025, I'm going to use this EEList sequence function. And I'll say start at 1984, end at 2025, and please go in increments of 1 year. We can print this list just to make sure that it looks how we expect, and it does. We are then going to create an empty image collection or an empty item that we will then populate in our function. So I will call this yearly image collection. And I'm going to just specify that this is an empty object by putting 2 brackets that are empty. Now I'll start to create this function. So I'm going to take that yearly image collection and I will be populating it through my function. So we have a list representing the years between 1984 and 2025. And we are going to do a sort of for loop like function over this list. For every single element in this list, for every single year, we are going to perform the following function. we are going to take that specific year and we're going to create an image in it. So in order to create this image, we need the start date and the end date for our image collection. So I'll say the start is a date, and I'm going to use this date from year, month, day function. So the year is our year. For this image, I'm going to use imagery between May and October. So for my start date, I'll put May 1st. And then for my end date, I'm going to put October 1st. And this is the same year. I also have an extra parentheses here that I need to get rid of, and that's why these boxes are showing up. That end parentheses should go here instead. And now I'm going to create that image using that start and end date. So I'll say yearly image. I'll take our merged images image collection from up here. And then I'm going to filter it just like how I would filter an image collection normally. So I'll filter it by date using the start and end date. I'm going to filter by cloud cover. So let's use filter less than or equal to cloud cover. Let's try to get less than 30% cloud cover. Let's then get the median of that image. Let's clip it by our ROI. And then finally, we are going to set a property within this image that represents the year. So I'm going to set a property called year, and I'm going to make that equal to the year that we specified here. After this, we will have a yearly image for each year. And then the last thing we need to do in this function is return that image. Then finally, I'm going to take this yearly image collection, and I'm going to tell Google Earth Engine that this is an image collection. This is just a sort of fail-safe to make sure that it recognizes that it is an image collection. All right, so now I can print this yearly image collection and see what pops up in the console. So it says it has 42 elements. And look at all of these images that all have 5 bands, so that makes sense. We do have one image that has 0 bands. Let's look inside of here. And this is for the year 2012. And that makes sense because if you know when Landsat 5 and Landsat 8 were launched, Landsat 5 was decommissioned in 2012 and Landsat 8 wasn't launched until 2013. So the reason that we have 0 bands for that year is because the satellites had a little bit of a gap in when they were decommissioned and launched. If we want, we can also quickly add one of these images to the map just to see what it looks like. And here's what our first image looks like over the Fort Worth, Dallas area. If we want here, we can look at some image stretch options and see which might be best for us. This will be important later when we need to input these min and max values into our GIF. All right, so now we can add this GIF to our console. And let's start off by creating some GIF parameters. I'm going to create a variable called GIF params. And then within these curly brackets, I'm going to set some important parameters for our GIF. Bands that we want to include in our GIF visualization are red, green, blue. The min, let's put what we had just hard-coded here, so 8,500, and then the max, let's put 16,000. The region is our ROI. So the scale of this imagery is 30, but usually with GIFs, and especially GIFs that represent ROIs that are as large as mine, it won't actually visualize in the console with a scale of 30. We're going to have to reduce the resolution of our GIF so that it will visualize in the console. I'm going to put a scale of 300 and see if that works. Then frames per second. I have a lot of images here. I have 42 elements in my GIF, so I'm going to use 4 frames per second. And then finally, for format, I'm going to put GIF. Then we can print our GIF to the console using this function called UI thumbnail. Within here, I will put the yearly image collection that we created and then the GIF params. Let's print that and see what happens. All right, so here's my GIF printed to the console. There's definitely some cloud effects, and so we could try to mitigate that by maybe reducing the cloud cover threshold up here. I think the image is a little bit dark as well, so I might adjust some of these min and max parameters. I'm gonna put the min back at 7,000 and see if that helps. There you go. Here's how you can create a GIF representing images from all available years between Landsat 5 and Landsat 8. You can see that there has been a lot of urbanization in this region, which is what I wanted to show. A next step might be adding labels to this GIF, and I'll show you how to do that in a future video.